good day and welcome to Market Insights. I am Lovina Emah. It's a beautiful Thursday morning. So today we are focusing on a topic that affects all businesses in Nigeria, which is logistics. Now, how can we streamline our logistics industry to boost your business? Now, as you know, as a business owner in Nigeria, it can be very frustrating to deal with inefficient or inefficient logistics, and delays in inefficiencies and high costs can eat into your profits and hinder your growth as a business owner. And we all know the causes of these things: unreliable deliveries, delays at ports, rising costs. But what if I told you that streamlining logistics can be a game changer for your business? Now think about it this way: efficient logistics gets your products to your customers faster and cheaper. This also means happier customers, more sales for your business, and a healthy bottom line. So in today's competitive market, that's the kind of edge you need to succeed. Now, for example, let's say a small fashion boutique is partnering with a reliable logistics company that can offer faster delivery options to your customers, which also increases your sales. So imagine a customer wanting a dress for a special occasion. It could be for a wedding, for a birthday. They will definitely want to pick from your boutique because they know they're going to be getting a faster delivery because of how efficient your services are. And this applies to all businesses, whether you're selling books, food, flowers, furniture, cars, etc. So with a more efficient logistics system, you can get your products to the market faster. You can also respond quickly to customers' demands. And in all of this, the most important, to stay ahead of the competition. So a streamlined logistics, that's a more organized logistics service, is not about speed and cost alone. It also gives you greater control of your inventory. You get to know exactly where your products are at all times, which helps you avoid stock outs and overstocking. And this can save you money and also ensure you have what your customers need. In addition, this efficient logistics service ripples throughout the entire economy. It will create jobs, it will stimulate growth, and in all of this, it will definitely improve our livelihoods. So how can you unlock the efficiency of a streamlined logistics service for your business? Joining me virtually this morning to discuss how we can use logistics to boost our businesses here in Nigeria. So my first guest, both guests are actually virtual though. So my first guest is architect Ebiwene Bozimo. He's the head of Primavis Global Services. He's also a project manager, education, and he's into education also, and media and content production firm. And my second guest is Razaq Olokoba. He's the convener of and also the national president of Campaign for Dignity in Governance, and he's also a public and policy analyst. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on Market Insights this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Great to be here. Thank you.
Okay, great to have you both on the program. Okay, so first of all, let me start with architect Ebiwene Bozimo. Now, the logistics industry in Nigeria is something that everybody complains about: delivery services, about how we need to make it more organized. But first of all, what are the current challenges facing Nigeria's logistics industry, and how do they impact businesses?
I would say within many of our built-up and urban spaces, we have a relatively decent logistic connection. You have, at the smallest level, courier services. At the larger level, you have buses, trucks, and all that, taking goods and services between places. But intercity logistics is less reliable. A number of transportation companies have set it upon themselves to take on the load, and you can actually go to certain bus companies and send things with relative reliability. But the challenges often are involved with tracking, involved with the route, the roads, and the promised time. Then last of all, the last mile of delivery. What some of our companies have done is they've created a situation where you can come and pick up. That, of course, is very useful. but it would be further enhanced if there were defined addresses everywhere so that people could actually get their deliveries at their doorstep, whether to a house or to a business. So I think a lot of it has to do with nomenclature, street naming and signing, just so that these urban areas are properly defined.
Okay, well said. Now, how has this affected businesses in Nigeria? Still on architect Ebiwene, how has this affected businesses in Nigeria, both for small and medium business owners?
Well, it gives them less certainty and security that what they're trying to convey, whether it's a good or some kind of service, will get to the intended recipient as and when due. Like you said in your intro, logistics, when working smoothly, is a tremendous way of improving businesses and economic activity in general. But when you are not sure, or when it takes you an additional number of steps to get your products sent and received from the other end, that adds cost for one thing, because if it was possible to pick it up or drop it at a convenient place, it would cost you less, and therefore that cost savings could be transferred to your customer. For the person picking it up, if they have to go out and get it rather than having it delivered, it would also cost correspondingly that much more. So it's a matter of reliability. Ultimately, there are situations where you can track a package from the point of being sent out to the point when it gets to the recipient. Later on, we'll talk about those technologies and how they can make life and business more, fluid.
Move to Razaq Olokoba. Okay, now we know that recently there's some stakeholders have called for the government's intervention into the logistics industry to ensure that there are some harmonizing policies and procedures that can improve the logistics services in Nigeria. So now, how can we ensure, or what steps would you take to make sure there are more policies that can streamline logistics services in Nigeria to create more efficiency in our logistics services?
Once again, thank you for having me. Well, let's segment the layers of logistics so that we'll be able to identify challenges each of them have, the peculiar challenges, and how to address it. Within Nigeria, there's logistics within the states that you are living. There's a second layer, which is also between the states you are and other states. These two have their own peculiar challenges. There's also logistics between Nigeria and other African countries, and between Nigeria and other countries outside the shore of Africa. There's no country that will joke with logistics, which is an important part of origin. Origin is a second contributor to the world economy. So if you slow down your origin business or you slow down your logistics, what you are doing essentially is that you are slowing down your economy. So it's an important aspect of the economy that we must not joke with, because goods must move from one point to the other. To such an extent that farmers these days don't saddle themselves with the responsibility of taking their goods to the market. Logistic companies in a more organized environment take care of such goods to the market. So, like my colleague has said, so many things are responsible for it. And let me quickly point out one or two before I will go to your question. Infrastructure is very, very central, because if you want to move from one location to the other, you are going to make use of the roads. When the roads are bad, you won't know. But downfall drivers, which is what we call them in Lagos, another layer of transport practitioners in other states, they have different names. Slow down traffic, and that's impacting on production time. So if you want a country that is going to operate a very perfect logistic exercise, government must pay sufficient attention to infrastructure, the roads. And that's why you see governments borrowing money even if there are legal challenges to construct and repair roads. One of the things they had in mind is to ensure that the movement is not because the family wants to move from one place to another, but because people transact business on the road. That's one thing. The second thing is that the policy that revolves around the logistic business in Nigeria requires frequent moderation, frequent changes. But it's a problem in Nigeria. In 2017 or so, I was part of the civil society that led a delegation of public to hearing when NIPOS is taking a bill to have access to database of Nigeria so that goods can be delivered at doorstep. But it didn't scale through because the priority set by the parliament then it was not how logistic business can move. So it's moribund. So policies around logistics create a problem for practitioners of that business, and also inter-agencies has a problem today on how to relate to each other. Custom has issue with immigration has issue with Ministry of Waterways. So to ensure that logistic business takes containers or goods out of the port, it takes days. For us, there should be pre-manifest exercises that are supposed to be conducted even before the cargo arrives. That's standard all over the world. So, and what is responsible for many of those things is our institutions. We need to look at our institution, the weakness, and strengthen it. What do I mean by that? When you have too much bottlenecks, there are logistic issues that should be resolved by Anambra State, by Lokogi State, by Kwara State, by Lagos State, but we didn't allow them to do that. We must visit the federal institution. Everything is centralized. So it takes ages for some of these planners to come out. And we don't know some of these small challenges hampers our economy. We might not be able to trace it. But as a chartered public administrator, we have been able to identify some of these small challenges as part of a major hindrance to the growth of our economy. So to come out of it, I will borrow from what my brother has also said, is that agencies that are responsible for such things should learn how to partner with private sector. When you, for instance, if you look at telecoms now, telecoms is in completely handled by private sector and it's working. Power sector must go to private sector too. Properly, not in the porous agreement that they had during Jonathan's time, a proper private sector operated power sector. The same thing logistics. There are certain issues that is still a big issue to crime of containers at port and things like that. That private sectors don't have environment to be able to operate properly. And that's why people don't want to pump money into logistics. And in the rest of the world, we have DHL airline, DHL rail line, DHL lorries, DHL trucks. So because of some of these policies, people are scared to invest in it. So there should be that more private participation, and there should be that policy assurance that if you pump your money into it, it's not going to do damage to it. And finally, as an expert in human resources, training is very essential. Very, 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 very important. You can't put a graduate of agriculture to go and come and operate logistics when we are even looking for agricultural engineer. So in Nigeria, we have this habit of putting wrong profession in the wrong field. You see engineer doing fish farming when we don't have enough engineer. You see doctor doing something else when we don't have enough doctors. So in our inability to ensure that experts undo their field, part of our problem. That's why training is essential. Even if you study logistics in the university, you must be retrained, because if you train and retrain, you will understand the new challenges in the industry, the new peculiarities that are coming up. For instance, there are challenges with the rest of the world with Nigeria and NIPOS. The standard measure where other countries have abide by, we have not been able to abide by it. At NIPOS, you see people's goods being stolen. So that body is sanctioning Nigeria almost on a yearly basis that you don't run logistics like this. There's no trust. There's no integrity in the way you run logistics business in your own country. So the government must look at the people that are in charge of transportation business, particularly in NIPOS. NIPOS, if you go to all our post offices today, interview and engage them, what you hear and what you see is an eyesore. The staff, agencies get more paid than a regular ministry or officer. But that's not the case with NIPOS. NIPOS staff, you see that still earning 60,000 to 50,000 naira. So, and that past production when we are not adequately paid. So the international angle to our logistic operation is also a big issue and a big challenge that we have to address. And we have to do that simultaneously with the local challenges. So if you do all these things, we are going to have a good day when it comes to operating the logistics, because it is very essential. Even if you can resolve all of that things virtual, goods cannot be sent and supplied virtually. Goods must be supplied physically. And to supply goods physically requires a robust logistic institution in the country. Hello?
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Razaq Olokoba. Yes, you really went in depth into that. Okay, yes, there was something you said about ensuring that we have that the private sector needs to get more involved in our logistics sector. Yes, the private sector is involved, but what do you think of having the arms of government creating more policies that could ensure a smoother logistics and a more efficient logistics sector, like perhaps a public-private partnership that can ensure collaboration and coordination among stakeholders and also the government? So what are your thoughts on this, Mr. Razaq?
But let me tell you this. The PPP in logistics is not enough. If you think people are investing their money in the logistics, go and check the data and compare it to other sectors. What people simply do is to obtain licenses that are similar to what NIPOS is doing. Then they will start using people who own power by, they collaborate with them. They collaborate with the transport owners. In Gilbo, there you see them taking parcel there. But in the sense of putting billions of naira into logistics, people where you see a company having an airline for logistics operation, we have people who have that capacity in Nigeria. We have people who can buy lorries, who can buy many power bikes to conduct this business. But they won't do that because I'm a businessman too. I'm a professional manager. I produce and I also train as a management consultant. Because there's no assurance in terms of a policy position in Nigeria that your money will come back to you. The policies are a bit too hostile. It's not conducive. So, and the recurring decimal in business is profit. When it's not guaranteed that your business, your money is going to come back to you, you won't do that. It is, people, look at the papa there, people own trucks there, people have 1, 2 trucks, 3, 4, 5 trucks. But if you want a proper situation where you have a logistics company having about 200 trucks in a papa to come in and go out, time is essential in logistics. Look at the rule, look at the way they conduct the business there. So nobody will invest more in logistics. If you see anybody involved in logistics, it's they transfer liability to each other. They obtain license, transfer liability to people who power back. From there, they transfer to people who own private buses like these little buses in Jibo. That's what they do. But that's how logistics is done anywhere in the world. Logistics, you can partner. But logistics is done where you are from bottom to top, from smaller equipment to the biggest equipment, crane. People who have logistics in this country operate it, and most of them are not the owners of the equipment, the forklift. Let's say people like Panapina, Joel Boje, and Joel Boje is Gomoribo, Panapina, the Murphy, and big institutions like that are people who equipment. But it shouldn't be only 1, 2 people. It shouldn't be a monopoly. So those people at that level also complain a lot about some of this issue. Mass like complain a lot about it. So there should be a policy shift when we're talking about the logistics in Nigeria, there must be that assurance. If you want people to come to the country to operate, one of which is that the power to run businesses must be given more to states. When the federal institution handle issue, there's so much complication. Local government has been added to it now. 774 local governments have been added to the autonomy, which I'm thoroughly opposed to. But part of the challenge is that they don't become experts in any of the things they handle. I'm talking about federal government now. But when you do smaller components, to divide your country to smaller, it's easy to govern. When the logistics of institutions are handled by the state government, they handle it properly. Apart, tell MPA, tell all the federal institutions to move there, and Lagos State will deliver. They deliver on LASMA, on the KAI, and on so many institutions. But they lump everything together. The federal institution must do everything. I have our 5 institutions that clear your paper before your economy will come out there. Economy don't grow like that. Economy don't grow like that. So,
Mr. Razaq, yes, I understand what you're saying. Okay, thank you for this. Let me move to architect Ebiwene Bozimo now. Yes, we've heard everything Mr. Razaq has said, and I want to get your thoughts on this now. How can we harmonize our policies and procedures to eliminate unnecessary bureaucracy and red tape? How can we ensure, for example, our customs and immigration, those two bodies, that there is more harmonization between them, and all this unnecessary regulations, everything should just be able to work in symmetry, both organizations, both law enforcement organizations, to ensure that there is more efficiency in our logistics sector?
Basically, if the purpose of a thing is not understood, abuse is inevitable. I sometimes wonder whether some of our institutions understand the privilege that they have and the opportunity they have to make a positive difference. How it is right now, in some cases, while we understand that people like customs have their targets and all that, they sometimes seem to operate as if they're not trying to help businesses along. Like Mr. Razaq said, a container should be able to come into the country, and ideally, no more than 24 hours later, it should be through and gone. But you find all sorts of obstacles put in the way, different gates, different checks. Again, these checks are necessary. We've heard recently about arms trying to be smuggled to the country. So we're not against checks, but the process, systems, and results should be speeded up, made more efficient. Then they should not work at cross purposes. Just a few, like yesterday, the president was talking about interagency competition. While he was referring to the security agencies, it also applies to these other non-security agencies like customs and other people. They should understand that they are all parts of an essential link in a chain. Logistics is about a connection from end to end with assorted steps in between. So when you go to a port and you think you've got one receipt and somebody else appears and acts as if you're in an entirely different world, that is an obstruction to progress being made. And by the time you have to overcome so many hurdles, you said the word, unnecessary bureaucracy. By definition, bureaucracy could be good, but the unnecessary ones could all be streamlined if, first, you create a policy framework where the goals of each of these inspectorates are clearly defined, the sequence in which they operate is better defined, and there's even some centralization of information management. A container is coming. There's normally a transmission in advance. You know what's expected. As arriving, the people who are specified should be able to look at it in a reasonable time. Equipment, X-ray machines, all those can be part of what you use to smooth the process. Now, when you have suspicions, you can now ask human beings to inspect closer. But there's some routine items that come. They should not be used as blocks in the chain of business activity. And then at the subnational level, at the state, there should be quote-unquote friendly competition between states so that a person who is about to import will tell themselves, if I take an item to Lagos port, it will take me 45 days to clear at 200 million naira. If I take it to Cocoa Port in Delta, it will take me 36 days to clear at 600 naira. There should be that kind of friendly competition, and that will now drive costs down and make it easier for people. So right now, with the over-centralization of every policy in this unitary government system where the federal is in charge of every single thing, there is almost no way for the federal to be able to effectively oversee the minutiae of steps involved in logistics. We're not saying the federal doesn't have a role, but it must delegate those roles and receive reports from those roles. You can't have somebody, there's no spider that can have its feet in every single place all over the country. The state should have control over. The budget for the port in New York alone is maybe at the New York City Ports Authority. It may be more than Nigeria's national budget. That's just for the Ports Authority, which involves the ports, the trains, and all the transportation systems. This should be what we're aspiring to. With a population of over 200 million, there's so much potential money, employment, and opportunity that can be extracted from our logistics arena. Think about the issue of trust that my colleague said just now. In the United States, if you want to get a passport, you don't actually have to go to a central passport place. The post office, the public post office, like our NIPOST, is so trusted that you can go to the equivalent of NIPOST, take your passport pictures, put your data in, and send it. And you will get a call in X number of times and get your passport back. That is the level to which they have built up trust in the system. As much as we have those fantastic companies named, DHL and Co., the majority of items sent and received in America are sent to the public postal, U.S. postal system. That is another opportunity that our NIPOST can take. As it happens, the post office, the central post office in each town, is the point at which distances between towns are measured. For those of us who are of a certain age, we had something called an atlas. Before people like you had Google Maps, you had to open a map and you would see something where you say distance from Zaria to Kaduna, so and so kilometers, distance from Kaduna to Lagos. They were measuring between post offices. So post offices have always been a very significant part of planning and urban management. I entered a post office here in Port Harcourt a few months ago. It's amazing the structure that exists. I was impressed by the workers who were actually trying to give me service. And I'm happy to say that the person in charge of the post is trying to upgrade those facilities, because all I went away from was that all this place needs a bit of TLC, tender loving care. New paint, new security, new light fixtures, maybe some updated equipment. And you will find that NIPOST, with correct workers in between the post offices and the other locations, can be much, much more efficient and a great revenue generator.
Thank you for that, Architect Ebiwene Bozimo. But I want to ask you now, we know NIPOST has been a government organization. It has branches all over the country. So now what do you think of a partnership with our private logistics sector and NIPOST in terms of warehousing for these private logistics services to keep some of the goods until when they are ordered by the customer, with partnership with NIPOST, and to also engage the services of NIPOST? Do you think this will promote more efficiency in our logistics sector?
May a thousand flowers bloom. There's actually nothing wrong with partnerships of A and K that you buy things online. They often have created their own pickup points. They can also include some pickup points at our NIPOST facility. And NIPOST too could collaborate with them for certain deliveries and use some of it. You see, it's all about information management. If I know that the nearest position to me from a certain business or location is such and such, it may not even matter how it's branded, as long as the good or item reaches me in a timely manner with the proper insurance cover, then I'll be confident to send it by any one of many means. Many times when you're trying to order things in some of those other countries, you have the option of certain companies or US Post. And even the US Post, they also compete with those private companies by telling you they can do overnight delivery, 2-day delivery, 3-day delivery. And then you find that those other companies are also doing that. Like Mr. Razaq said, FedEx has an airline. DHL has an airline. Imagine the amount of investment it takes to invest that, because you are trying to determine that whatever is needed through your company will come. Formula One, that's motor racing sport that travels all over the world. They have a permanent partnership with DHL so that any part that they need ordered from anywhere in the world will get there assured. That is a level of trust that NIPOS has every opportunity to build side by side with these other, private companies. The point at the end of the day must be remembered. People need goods, services, and products. And once they have a reliable means to do this, their money will flow in that direction. So it'll be well worth those who choose to invest. But a lot of government policies where, let's come down to the smallest level, where the people on those motorbikes are harassed at every turn by people who are asking for all sorts of things, must be stopped. Those are some of the obstacles. You cannot be disturbing people who are trying to make a legitimate business work. So multiple taxation, if somebody has paid and they have the proof of it, let them through. Too many people feel that those are low-hanging fruit that can be asked.
So let me start with architect Ebiwene Bozimo now. Yes, you've said a whole lot about our logistics sector and ways by which it can be improved. Now let's talk about the use of technology to address the unique challenges that are affecting our logistics industry. And how can we use this technology to improve on our logistics sector and also these infrastructure deficits and security concerns?
Well, one of the key things that is much more employed in logistics is tracking mechanisms, the ability to know and assure yourself of the integrity of the process where your package or your item is reliably transferred. In the buildings themselves, you can have the means of scanning items, where warehouses made better so that more efficiency is actually applied in that part. When you take a package to a place, the process by which you're able to engage with people, you're able to get your information across, you're able to assure yourself that this will be done. Whatever is done, remote RFID, where you are able to track items within the warehouse and actually out of the warehouse onto the trucks, is a very important part of it. And luckily, we have a fairly decent IT technology base Nigeria. It must be admitted that this we're all talking at different locations and hearing each other. We have telecoms companies, their partnerships will be done there. And I just think in the buildings themselves, the first thing is to improve all the facilities from security in the actual post offices, security and logistics at the warehouses, and connect all that information, not just within states, but across the nation, so that it's possible. I remember in library systems, it's possible to go to one library and say, I want a certain book. And they can check the entire library system of the state and order that book from another location and bring it to your location at a given time so that you can get it. I know, once again, books may not be so popular now, but that kind of connectivity can be applied to the logistics sector as well. There are a number of innovations that make the operators save money. You can use maybe more economically environmentally friendly vehicles to lower the cost of running the logistics themselves. Training. I know with one of those courier companies, they have systems, computer program systems, where when they get all their packages, they put all their addresses into a computer, a trip computer, and the trip computer helps them compute the most ideal and economic route to go and drop all the packages. All these may not seem important for one trip, but when you're doing hundreds of trips a day, and do thousands of trips a month, you end up saving a lot of resources in terms of fuel and time, and you're more efficient. So technology would actually be one of the base things to upgrade the logistics system here in Nigeria.
Thank you for that, Architect Ebiwene. Okay, but I still want to state that books are still being read these days. They're not old-fashioned anyway. But I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen these drones that are being used to get people's packages to them, moving from one point to another. It's mostly used in European cities. So what are your thoughts on using these kind of services here in Nigeria, the use of drones to get perhaps maybe small deliveries, small packages from within a city, for example, from one location to another? How efficient will this service be?
In fact, I think there was an explosion of ideas and technology during the recent COVID, because over there, in many of those countries, they found that when they were doing all that social distance, they were still managing to deliver services, e.g. food and medication to people, and they were trying to minimize contact. So I think that was one of the times where they now introduced some of those drones. Of course, we have drones here in Nigeria. Now, the degree to which we have drones that can actually lift light and small items would be questioned. I know we have these consumer and prosumer drones that can do movies and all that, but you need a certain step up from those ones to actually carry small loads. And the prices of those two will go back to Mr. Razaq's thing about investment. It takes X amount of money. Now, that's where authorities at the state or even local government level can come in. If you just do your research back in some years ago, then Minister of Finance used to publish how much money went to each level of government down to the local government level. And some local governments were getting hundreds of millions of naira a month. Not all, but a few. Those local governments have an opportunity to become more competitive in not just logistics, but every other issue. But since we're talking about logistics here, those kind of people would actually invest with partnerships in some of this equipment like drones and all that. And you could say that, look, in this particular zone of the country or state, logistics are top notch. They use trucks, they use cars, they use bikes, and they use drones. It's one additional layer of service provision. But what is the desire to provide service? So if a drone can do it as effectively as a motorbike can do it, by all means, use the motorbike. The important thing is define your addressing. Make sure that the city or the town can be properly navigated, and you'll find that logistics business will flow much, much.
Okay, thank you for that, Architect Ebiwene. Okay, let me move to Mr. Razaq Olokoba. I want to talk about the implications now. Okay, so Mr. Razaq, now what are the implications of streamlining logistics for Nigeria's trade relationships with other countries, particularly within the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area?
Well, thank you very much. Before, when Gaddafi was the leader of the African Union, some of the things he spoke or he dedicated much of his time to achieve is business relations between African countries, and also how to guarantee common security network. In fact, that was why we're able to use GSM today, contrary to the belief of many people that was Obasanjo. We used to have access to the British satellites, and we pay £400 million every year. It was Gaddafi that paid $200 million out of the $500 million that we're supposed to use to build our satellites. Then other African countries complemented with the remaining $200 million. So it came when John Abacha was there, but it didn't tap into it until Absalam left and Abacha came in. So it was assumed that was how much that brought it in, but it was actually Gaddafi that helped with GSM in Africa. And he spoke very well about the need to remove barriers in our African countries who trade with each other. In fact, he spoke so much about common currency, and that when at customs point, we should also remove certain barriers that we should assume if we are coming from Ghana to Nigeria or to Benin Republic or Niger, we should assume that we are moving from one state to the other, which means our law enforcement agency must have a common training ground where they will preempt any lawbreakers bringing contraband into the country. And a lot of countries are doing that, even not within the continent. If you travel to America from using this airline, Etihad airline, they take you to your country, the custom and immigration service will be given there. We enable you to walk into America with your luggage without being checked, because they will have conducted that in the Arab country before the UAE, before you get to America. So the point you raise is very important, very, very vital, that it is important to remove this barrier. At times, two African countries create a lot of a problem in relating with each other, and they find it more easy to relate with France, Germany, or any other countries outside Africa. That barrier must go, because one of the things that hinders African logistic problem is also because African nations are unable to relate with each other freely. Africa is a very, 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 very huge market, twice the population of Europe. So we need to pay sufficient attention to it and to make sure that if two African countries have reason to relate with each other in terms of exchange of goods, it should be done with less ease, without much hindrance. That is going to boost the African economy, and it's going to boost the local economy of each African country. You'll be shocked to know that the largest share owner of AFDB, African Development Bank, yes, African Development Bank, is not even Africans. Other countries, and these are countries that should be able to aid and fund private sectors to do businesses like haulage, which is also logistics in Africa, but it's not. So the question you ask me is to call on African leaders to put their heads together, to realize that there's nothing we consume in Africa that we don't have raw materials for. So if we have that kind of at the back of our mind, what Chris Brown said about Africa, in his book, The Shape of Things to Come, he's going to reverse it. Africa was not featured in the economy of the world from now to the next 100 years. Why? Because we didn't take advantage of the resources we have as a nation. We relate to the rest of the world as a weaker nation. All of the resources we have is enough and sufficient for us to become the beacon of the entire world. So it's important to look at those laws that will aid movement of goods from one country to the other. That is why it is more easy to smuggle goods, because laws that is difficult to obey in our borders are there. When Nigeria wants to move things to Nigeria, it becomes difficult to pass through custom. So logistic organization run a business well, run away from it. Nobody wants to run at loss, because to transport goods from two African countries is really difficult, much more difficult than when you want to send goods from where to any European country. So that's one of the challenges that we have not been able to tap into the potential of African logistics business, and it is very, very important we look into it. The countries in Africa must, as a matter of emergency, see every African country as a lifeline to survive. Whenever we need any material.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Razaq. Yes, we need more unity in the continent to promote trade, and also to ensure more efficient logistics services. Yes. Now, still on you, Mr. Razaq. Now, how do we strike a balance between efficiency and sustainability? How can logistic companies in Nigeria implement sustainable practices while still optimizing their operations?
There are two things that we need to do. First, we need enlightenment. There are laws we didn't break if you are moving certain goods within Nigeria. There are laws that you have broken if you attempt to take certain goods outside Nigeria. So your staff needs to be enlightened, and Nigeria also needs to be enlightened. Custom officers and policemen stop people from transporting rice within Nigeria, and they will be asking you, do you have plans to take this rice from one state to the other, saying that it's an interstate importation? Where is that in our law? So enlightenment becomes very, very important, so that when people conduct their businesses, for instance, I produce pure water, and there are the laws that covers me from paying certain taxes. I am exempted because it's considered part of a farm product. But many people who produce pure water don't know this law, so they end up paying taxes that is not due to them. So enlightenment becomes very, very important, so that when you are guided by the law, It's going to aid your business. And the second thing is that we have to train our staff. When you don't train your staff, they become a liability. Because what makes a staff efficient is actually to be knowledgeable in the field that he has been asked to perform certain duty on. If you don't have sufficient knowledge on what you are trained to, on what you are assigned to do, there will be so much challenges for such personnel. Then, which is the challenge of many other organizations have, the question of how to pay good salaries to your workers. To such an extent that if your worker that is not well paid is to deliver a good, and there's an error in maybe the address and the location of the goods, a staff that is not well paid will return the good back home. But if it's well paid, it will make extra effort to know that this organization must survive. The organization must not die. And the final thing is that the body of logistics institution in Nigeria, there should be a board, there should be an institution that relates together, needs to frequently speak with the government on the policy that they operate, particularly on the need to assign more responsibility to the states. My colleague said that certain rules are still being played by federal government that essentially.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Razaq Olokoba. It's been great talking with you on Market Insight this morning on how we can use our logistics to boost our businesses in Nigeria. It's been a very insightful discussion. I also want to thank architect Ebiwene Bozimo for his contributions to this topic. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me in this discussion this morning. And I look forward to having you both again on Market Insights.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure and privilege.
Okay, now let's look at the foreign exchange rates this morning, how the Naira is selling against the dollars, the pound sterling, and the euro, and what the foreign exchange rate is saying this morning for the official CBN rates and also for the parallel market rates. So for today, Thursday, 25th July, the dollar is currently selling at 1,515 Naira to $1. That's the CBN rate. And for the parallel market rate, it's selling at 1,584 Naira to $1. For the pound sterling, at the CBN rate is 1,981 Naira to £1 sterling. For the parallel market rate is 2,041 Naira to £1 sterling. And for the euro, it's 1,671 Naira to €1. At the parallel market, it's 1,718 Naira to €1. So those are our money market figures this morning. So many thanks for watching the program Market Insights as we discussed how to streamline our logistics sector to boost your business. And like my guests have also mentioned, the important aspects of having to put in the right kind of addresses so it doesn't confuse the delivery services when they are getting your goods or products to your home. So it's been a very great discussion with you, and we've taken a lot of notes from this on how to also get our government agencies to partner with our logistics sector and the right way to improve it in terms of investments, and the most important aspect, educating and enlightening ourselves on the benefits of boosting our logistics sector. Many thanks for watching the program this morning. Do stay tuned to the news update on Souk News Television. I am Lovina Emah.